Hey everyone, and welcome back to Mighty Habits. I'm Steven,
I'm Mary.
and as always, it's great to have you here with us for another deep dive.
It's great to be here.
Today, we're going to be tackling a topic that has really captured my attention lately.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and it's this idea of never being finished,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like always pushing forward, always striving for more.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I think about this idea, one person who immediately comes to mind
Okay.
is David Goggins.
Of course.
Have you heard of him?
Yes, absolutely.
So for those who may not be familiar, David Goggins is like this ultra-endurance athlete.
Mm.
He's ex-military, he's a motivational speaker.
Yeah, he's a force of nature, really.
Yeah, he really is. And his book, Never Finished, really digs deep into this mindset of always pushing yourself, of never settling. And we thought, you know what?
Yeah,
This would be a perfect topic for a deep dive.
for sure.
So that's what we're going to be doing today.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that I find so fascinating about Goggins' story is that it goes way beyond just physical strength.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. The guy runs ultra marathons. He's completed Navy SEAL training. I mean,
Yeah.
things that most of us can barely fathom, right?
Right. It's incredible the things he does.
It's incredible. But it's the mental aspect that really intrigues me the most.
Absolutely.
Like, how does he push his mind to those limits?
Exactly. How do you keep going when your body is just screaming for you to stop?
Right.
What's happening in his head that allows him to achieve those incredible feats?
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
It is a big question. And I think that's where this whole idea of mental performance comes in.
Okay.
It's about understanding and training your mind to perform at its peak, just like you would train your body.
Right.
And in Goggins' case, it's clearly a crucial factor in his success.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. But, I'm sitting here thinking like,
Yeah.
I'm not training for an ultra marathon.
Right.
I'm not, trying to become a Navy SEAL.
Sure.
So how does this concept of mental performance even apply to someone like me?
That's a great question. And I think
Part to our listeners,
absolutely. I think a lot of people might be thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
But the reality is that mental performance is not just for elite athletes.
Okay.
It's for anyone who faces challenges, setbacks, times when they want to give up.
Right. We all experience those things
We all do.
in different ways.
In different ways, whether it's work deadlines, personal goals, or even just getting through a tough day,
Yeah.
Mental performance is about tapping into that inner resilience and finding the strength to keep going.
So you're saying it's really about mental grit then?
Exactly. That ability to push through when things get tough, no matter what the challenge is.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so how does Goggins, what are we learning from him about how he does that?
Well, that's the thing. We don't have to just guess.
Okay.
Because Brian Cain, a leading expert in mental performance coaching, actually analyzed Goggins' book
Oh, wow.
on his podcast, Mental Performance Daily.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of Brian Cain. He's like the go-to guy for athletes and, high performers.
He's worked with everyone from Olympic athletes to Fortune 500 CEOs.
Wow.
And he really breaks down those mental strategies behind this never finish philosophy.
Okay, so we've got this world-renowned mental performance expert breaking down the mindset
Yes.
of an ultra-endurance athlete.
It's a pretty cool combination.
I'm officially intrigued.
Me too.
What kind of insights did Cain uncover?
Well, one of the key things he highlights is Goggins' emphasis on constantly pushing limits,
Okay.
both mental and physical. It's this idea of never settling, always seeking out ways to grow and expand your capacity.
That sounds exhausting.
It does sound a little bit exhausting, doesn't it?
It's always being on, always pushing. Like, is there a point where it becomes too much?
That's a great question, and one we should definitely delve into further. But
Right.
before we get there, I think it's helpful to really unpack this idea of pushing limits a little bit more. What do you think it actually looks like in practice for someone who's not, say, training for a Navy SEAL mission?
That's a good question. I guess for me, it might be about tackling that project I've been putting off
Oh, yeah.
because it just feels so overwhelming. Or maybe it's about finally having that tough conversation that I've been avoiding.
Right, and I think that's where Kane's analysis gets really valuable because he takes these grand,
Yeah.
almost superhuman feats of Goggins and translates them into principles that we can all apply.
So you're saying pushing limits doesn't necessarily mean running a marathon.
Exactly.
It's more about identifying those areas where we're holding ourselves back
Yes.
and challenging ourselves to step outside of our comfort zones.
I love that. And I think that's a great segue into another core theme Kane picked up on.
Okay.
The importance of mental toughness.
Mental toughness, that phrase gets thrown around a lot.
It does.
But what does it actually mean in Goggins' world?
Well, to me, it sounds like it's about embracing discomfort, right? Not shying away from challenges, but facing them head on, even when it's painful or difficult.
Right. And Kane's saying that Goggins actually takes this a step further.
He does. He doesn't just endure discomfort.
Oh, wow.
He actively seeks it out.
Really?
He believes that by putting ourselves in challenging situations, we build resilience and develop a deeper well of mental strength.
So it's not about avoiding the pain, it's about using it as a tool for growth.
Exactly.
That's pretty intense.
It is pretty intense, but it's also kind of inspiring.
It is inspiring. I'll give you that.
And I think it speaks to the fact that we often underestimate our own capacity for resilience. We get comfortable in our routines and avoid things that feel difficult. But Goggins is saying, hey, there's a whole other level of strength and capability within you, but you have to be willing to push yourself to find it.
Okay. I mean, that's powerful stuff, but it also raises a lot of questions for me.
Sure.
Like, how do we know where to draw the line between pushing ourselves and overdoing it?
Yeah.
And is this kind of, embrace the suck mentality?
Right.
It's really sustainable for everyone.
Those are fantastic questions, and ones that I think a lot of people grapple with. And to be honest, there's no easy answer.
Right.
But I think Kane's analysis can give us some clues, because what's fascinating is that he doesn't just admire Goggins from afar. He applies a critical lens to his methods.
Okay, so we're not just blindly accepting Goggins' philosophy. We're examining it.
We're examining it.
From different angles.
Different angles.
Trying to understand the nuances and the potential limitations.
Absolutely. And that's what makes it so relevant to our listeners, because we're all on this journey of self-improvement.
Right.
Trying to figure out what works for us. And Goggins' story, while extreme, offers some valuable lessons about the power of the mind and the potential we all have within us.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of potential, I'm curious to hear more about what Kane had to say about some of those specific techniques that Goggins uses to develop this mental toughness.
Okay.
What are some of the tools in his tool belt to push past his limits?
Well, one that Kane highlights is the use of visualization.
Okay.
Goggins is a big believer in mentally rehearsing challenging situations. Before he actually faces them, he'll imagine himself going through the pain, the fatigue, the doubts, and coming out on the other side.
So it's almost like, pre-programming his mind for success.
Yeah.
Like an athlete visualizing their perfect performance.
Exactly. And Kane emphasizes that this isn't, some mystical woo-woo stuff.
Right.
There's actual neuroscience behind it when we visualize something vividly.
Oh, wow.
Our brains fire neurons in a similar pattern to when we're actually experiencing it.
So it's like tricking your brain into believing it's already overcome the obstacle.
Almost. And this mental rehearsal can help build confidence and reduce anxiety when you're faced with the real challenge.
That's so cool. Okay, so visualization's one tool.
Yeah.
What are some other techniques that Goggins uses?
Well, another one that Kane dives into is the power of self-talk.
Okay.
We all have that inner voice, right? And Goggins is very intentional about making sure his inner voice is a supportive coach, not a critical judge.
Right. So instead of telling himself, I can't do this, it's more like, I've got this.
Yes.
Even when things get tough.
Exactly. It's about reframing those negative thoughts and replacing them with empowering ones.
Okay.
And Kane stresses that this isn't about denying reality.
Right.
It's about choosing a more helpful perspective.
Okay. I can see how that would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
If you're constantly putting yourself down, it's going to be harder to push through challenges.
Yeah.
But if you have that inner cheerleader, it might give you that extra push you need.
Absolutely. And this kind of intentional self-talk can be incredibly powerful in building resilience and maintaining motivation, especially when things get tough.
Yeah. I mean, this is all great stuff, Mary, but I think it's important to remember that Goggins is kind of an extreme example.
He is.
His level of intensity and discipline is not for everyone.
Absolutely. And Kane actually addresses this in his analysis.
Oh, okay.
He's not suggesting that everyone needs to adopt Goggins' exact approach.
Right.
What he's highlighting are the underlying principles that we can adapt to our own lives and goals.
So it's not about becoming a carbon copy of Goggins.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the mental tools
Yes.
he uses and finding ways to apply them to our own
Exactly.
unique challenges and aspirations.
Yes, and being realistic about our own limits and needs.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it still leaves me wondering, like, how do we actually put this into practice?
Right.
Like, where do we start?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, what's a good first step for someone who wants to develop this kind of mental toughness?
Yeah.
But maybe isn't ready to, like, jump into an ice bath.
Well, I think a great place to start is with self-awareness.
Okay.
Cain talks about the importance of understanding your own thought patterns and identifying those negative self-talk loops that might be holding you back.
So it's about paying attention to that inner voice.
Yeah.
And noticing when it starts to kind of sabotage our efforts.
Exactly. And once you become aware of those negative patterns,
Yeah.
you can start to challenge them and replace them with more supportive and empowering self-talk.
Okay, so awareness is the first step. But what about actually pushing our limits?
Yes.
How do we find that sweet spot between challenging ourselves and overdoing it?
Cain suggests starting small.
Okay.
Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight.
Right.
Instead, identify one area where you want to push yourself and set a small, achievable goal that takes you slightly outside of your comfort zone.
So instead of, trying to run a marathon, maybe it's signing up for a 5K.
Yeah.
Or even just committing to a regular walking routine.
Exactly. It's about building momentum and proving to yourself that you're capable of more than you think.
Right.
And as you achieve these small wins, your confidence grows,
Mm-hmm.
and you naturally start to set bigger goals.
So it's like building that mental muscle gradually instead of trying to,
Yes.
lift a heavy weight right off the bat.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that this is a journey, not a destination. Yeah.
There will be setbacks.
Yeah.
There will be days when you don't feel like pushing yourself, and that's okay.
Right.
The key is to keep showing up, keep practicing these mental tools,
Okay.
and keep learning from your experiences.
That's a great reminder, Mary. It's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
Absolutely. And one of the things I really appreciate about Cain's analysis is that he emphasizes the importance of self-compassion.
Okay.
He recognizes that Goggins' approach can be pretty intense.
Yeah.
And he encourages listeners to find a balance that works for them.
So it's about pushing yourself, but also listening to your body and your mind.
Yes.
Knowing when to rest and recover.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sustainable sweet spot where you're challenging yourself without burning yourself out.
That makes a lot of sense. And it brings me back to a question I had earlier.
Oh.
Is this embrace the suck mentality
Yeah.
really sustainable for everyone?
That's a great question and one that I think deserves some nuanced discussion.
Okay.
While Goggins' approach is undeniably inspiring.
It's important to remember that he's an exceptional individual.
Right.
His level of intensity and discipline might not be realistic or even healthy for everyone.
Right. We all have different limits.
We do.
Different thresholds for discomfort.
Yeah. What might feel like a challenge for one person could feel like torture for another.
Totally. And I think Cain is careful to acknowledge this.
He is.
He's not advocating for blind adherence to Goggins' methods.
Right.
Instead, he encourages listeners to find their own version of embracing the suck.
Yes.
One that aligns with their own values, goals, and personal limits.
I love that.
So it's about finding a way to push ourselves that feels both challenging and empowering without crossing the line into self-punishment or unsustainable practices.
Exactly. And I think that's where the real value of Goggins' story lies.
Okay.
Not in mimicking his every move, but in extracting the underlying principles of mental toughness and resilience.
Right.
And adapting them to our own unique circumstances.
This has been a really insightful discussion, Mary. I feel like I'm starting to understand the nuances of Goggins' never-finished philosophy.
Yeah.
And how it can be applied in a way that feels both challenging and empowering.
Me too. It's been great to delve into this topic with you and explore the different layers of mental performance, self-talk, and finding that sweet spot between pushing ourselves and respecting our limits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what stands out to you as the most valuable takeaway from this deep dive so far?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's the reminder that our minds are far more powerful than we often give them credit for.
Yeah.
Goggins' story, while extreme, demonstrates that we all have the capacity to overcome challenges and achieve things we might have once thought impossible.
I totally agree.
Oh.
And it's not just about, superhuman feats of endurance.
Right.
It's about applying these mental tools to everyday life.
Yes.
To our work, our relationships, our personal goals.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that never-finished mindset, a mindset of growth resilience, and a commitment to constantly pushing our own boundaries.
Now, for our listeners who are feeling inspired and want to learn more about Goggins' philosophy and how to apply it to their own lives, what would you recommend?
Well, his book, Never Finished, is definitely a great place to start. It's a raw and honest account of his journey, filled with anecdotes and insights that can be both challenging and motivating.
Awesome. And for those who want to delve deeper into the mental side of performance and really understand the science behind these techniques, checking out Brian Cain's work, especially his podcast, Mental Performance Daily, is a fantastic resource.
Yeah, absolutely. He breaks down these complex concepts in a way that's both accessible and actionable.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. Mary, thanks for sharing your insights and expertise.
It's been my pleasure. Always love these conversations.
And to our listeners, we want to leave you with a final thought. We all have those moments when we hit a wall. When we feel like giving up. But Goggins, he reminds us that our limits are often, far lower than our true potential.
It's like we have this untapped reservoir of strength and resilience. Just waiting to be unleashed.
Exactly. And sometimes all it takes is a shift in perspective. A little bit of self-belief and the willingness to embrace the challenge, to tap into that hidden power.
I love that. I think that's a fantastic point to end on. It's not about becoming David Goggins. It's about discovering our own inner never-finished spirit.
Absolutely. And who knows what incredible things we might achieve when we do.
Well said. This has been a truly inspiring deep dive.
It has.
Into the world of David Goggins and the never-finished philosophy.
I couldn't agree more. It's been fascinating to explore these concepts of mental performance, self-talk, and the power of pushing our limits.
And I think it's a great reminder that we all have the capacity for growth and resilience no matter what challenges we face.
If you're ready to tap into your own never-finished spirit, we highly recommend checking out David Goggins' book, Never Finished.
Absolutely.
It's a raw and honest look at his journey and the mental strategies that he's used to achieve extraordinary things.
And for those of you who want to explore the science and practical application of mental performance even further, Brian Cain's podcast, Mental Performance Daily, is an invaluable resource.
We hope you found this deep dive insightful and motivating.
Yes.
Remember, it's not about being perfect.
Nope.
It's about progress.
That's right.
Keep pushing yourself. Keep learning, and never stop striving to become the best version of yourself.
And be sure to follow or subscribe to Mighty Habits for more deep dives into fascinating topics. We're exploring new ideas every week, so stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations and inspiring insights. Until next time, keep those mighty habits going.